It's now week 4 of my level 3 counselling course, and we've been looking at empathy and the person-centered approach. Now, I did cover the person-centered at level 2, but it was very surface level, and now moving into level 3, we've been covering it in a bit more detail. In particular, we've been having conversations around the core principles that Carl Rogers set out for the approach in order to almost guarantee that therapeutic growth in the client, looking at conditions of worth. And in particular, we had some really cool conversation around unconditional positive regard, which is one hell of a mouthful. I'll recap first with empathy, and that was the main focus of our class in week 3. And we had some cool discussions around, first of all, defining what empathy is. So in my own words, it's that ability to step into someone's shoes, see the world from their perspective, feel what they are feeling. And there's a clear distinction between that and sympathy. So sympathy seems on the surface like you're acknowledging the other person's situation. But the focus is more on how you feel, how I am reacting to it. So something like, oh, I feel really sorry for you. That's terrible. Whereas empathy is like the upgrade of that, like an evolution of that, where the focus now becomes the other person's experience, the other person's feelings, and that is what is needed to help that person feel understood, heard, listened to. And so I suppose the way my tutor described it, it's like putting one of your feet in their shoes, but at the same time it's only one of your feet, so you still have a foot in your own world. Otherwise you can just get swallowed up by that person's experience and feelings, particularly if they're coming to you in a moment of distress. So that sort of leads on to the work that we're doing with person-centered, because empathy is one of those core conditions that Carl Rogers believes is necessary to really get that therapeutic growth and change in the client's situation. So there are 3 what's known as core or active conditions for the person-centered approach. So that's empathy, something called congruence, so that's that ability to be real, to be genuine. And I suppose at this moment, the best way that I can explain it is who I am outside of the counselling room is the same person that I am presenting to the client. So it just really speaks to the work that needs to be done to really build self-awareness, to understand what internally is going on with me, and when the incongruence is popping up, just being very aware of that and how it might potentially hinder that therapeutic relationship. And then the big one, which is unconditional positive regard. And the best way that I understand this right now is when I hear that, I think no judgment. So you're establishing a judgment-free zone where the client feels safe to open up and explore those difficult experiences and emotions. And we had a really fascinating discussion in class amongst the group, where we were thinking about what might some things be that could irritate or frustrate or annoy or challenge your values and beliefs, where if these things were to occur, you feel you wouldn't be able to provide that unconditional positive regard. And there's one that really stood out for me, which I didn't expect, and my tutor sort of mentioned it in passing. And this was, what if a client is consistently late to your sessions? And I noticed that this really bothered me, the idea of somebody just constantly turning up late. Me personally, I'm very punctual. I'm usually on time or early, and even being something like 5 minutes late, that bothers me. And to think of someone just constantly showing up late, there's this like strong sense of annoyance, and my way of thinking becomes very black and white. Either you respect me and my time, or you don't. There's no in the middle with that. There's no gray area. And some of the other students in the class brought up some interesting counterpoints. Clearly, Peter, you value being punctual and being on time. Somebody else might not in the same way. They may feel anxious about coming to counselling. They may have been forced, so to speak, to come to counselling. It wasn't their choice. There are so many legitimate reasons why somebody might be late, and I respect that there are those different counterpoints, but yeah, just that strong feeling of annoyance is there, and it makes me recognize that if that were to be happening, I'd find it very difficult to maintain that judgment-free zone. So it's interesting to think about, because when you think of what might be some things that stop you from being able to provide that unconditional positive regard, you think of big, deep, dark things, but there are those small, or what seems small and trivial things that frustrate, irritate, annoy, that can pop up and start to create that disconnect between you and you the client, and that ability to keep that judgment-free space. So yeah, that's week 3, week 4, the kind of things that we've been covering, discussing. Moving forward into week 5, we're going to be covering CBT, and I'm interested for this because we didn't do any of that at all at level 2, and I've heard about it, especially in relation to like the National Health Service here in the UK, where CBT is basically the go-to if you're looking at therapeutic, like a talking therapy approach. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of dig into that, see what that is like, and also do some skills practice from that CBT approach, and sort of see how it potentially gels or potentially grinds my gears. We'll see. But in the same way, I'll come back, cover and recap. So thank you for listening, and see you soon.